So I'm going to get started. Um, so what I'm going to show you guys today is the PowerSchool gradebook. The school has online grades, and so parents and students are able to access grades, assuming you use the PowerSchool gradebook and you put your grades in there. So it is an expectation that all of your grading be done in PowerTeacher Pro, which is the online gradebook. And it is also an expectation that grades are entered at a maximum of 8 days duration from when they were due. Hopefully, everybody is grading and entering faster than that. I mean, within 3 or 4 or 5 days. But the expectation of the principals is definitely that you have your assignments and your marks in within 8 days of when it's due. So I'm going to walk through all of the setup, everything you need to know about PowerTeacher Pro. So give me a second. Let me share my screen. And hopefully you guys can see okay. Just, it's a little hard for me to see like hands and things like that while I'm presenting. So if you have a question or anything, just speak up and definitely I'll get to you. So to access the gradebook, you want to go to the PowerSchool teacher portal. There is a link for it under My CH, so you can always go there if you've forgotten it. I recommend, though, that you bookmark it. And if you, depending on how much screen space you have, if you want to follow along with your gradebook at the same time, certainly feel free. Maybe you could have like my presentation on half the screen and yours on another. Or if you just want to follow along with my presentation and look at yours later, whatever works for you is totally fine. But I would recommend bookmarking campbellhall.powerschool.com/teachers, plural. You want to have that. You're going to be using it every day, every class for attendance. Of course, every time you want to do your grades, to put placements in for the kids for next year, you'll be using it quite a bit. To log in, you're going to use just your username, noah@campbellhall.org, and then whatever you've set your password to. This will work in any browser. It will even work on mobile browsers, an iPhone, Android, iPad, whatever you want to use. The experience is probably nicest on a laptop in a full browser, but it should work generally pretty much anywhere. So the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to drop into this landing portal. Just so you know, this is the place where you would take attendance. If you haven't had a chance to watch that attendance video, you definitely want to do it. I can't demo attendance for you because today, of course, is not a class day. But just so you know, the basic idea of attendance is you will log in, you click the chair by whatever your class is, you will look at your students, and if any of them are late or not there, you click a little drop down, you'll pick unverified, you'll check on them, and you'll hit submit. If they're all there, you still hit submit, the light turns green, your attendance is done, and the office won't call you and harass you. But for today, what we're looking for is PowerTeacher Pro. And you can see there's a link here. There's also a link under each of your classes. The way this works is if you click the link up here, they're all going to go to the same place, but this would go to essentially your first alphabetical class, whereas this would drop you right into that class specifically. Doesn't matter that much because we can change class once we get in there. So I'm going to go and click into PowerTeacher Pro.
Alex, can I ask a really quick question?
Sure, yeah.
So when you're signing into the PowerSchool like teacher sign-in,
yes,
is the username and password your email address and password? Like what
not
you would
your email address. You cannot use the @campbellhall.org. Just your username, that
just
portion, or the @. The password
okay.
will be the same though.
Okay. And the same password as
whatever you use for everything else, Google, Gmail, everything. They're all tied together.
Okay. So would there be any reason?
Reset it just with Google. Don't do that. If you need to reset your password, we have a process for you to do that.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. So basic navigation, once you get in, if you want to change classes, that's all done through this class picker at the top. And just so you know, it will organize by year. So for example, early in the summer, if you were teaching here last year, it might say 1920, and so you can change the year up here. This filter where it says S1, this means it will show me only classes that happen to take place during the time period of S1. You may want to change it to the year if you want to see everything, both semester 1, semester 2, and year-long classes. And of course, you can see your classes here. If you click on a class, it will take you to assignments, which we'll be going through later once we do our basic setup. This little icon here takes you right to the grading score sheet, and this takes you to an analytics page. So this is an easy way to move between your classes, whatever class you want to work on. Up here, there's a creation button. We'll be going through this later, but just so you understand, it doesn't matter where you are in PowerTeacher Pro. If you click the plus, you can make an assignment. If you click the plus, you can make a category. You don't have to be in assignments or in categories to make things. Another thing I want to show you is an option here under your name. Of course, there's a sign out. There are also view options, small, medium, and large. And these have pretty big impacts on what you can see. Of course, if you make the view small, you'll be able to see more things, more text, more details about the assignments. However, if you make them medium or large, not only will the text become larger, you will also be able to see pictures of the kids, which is pretty cool. So you may want to flip back and forth between these or find a size that works for you. But it does have effects on what you see and how you can work. So the first thing we really want to think about is getting set up. And getting set up is something you're going to want to do every year in August before classes start. And getting set up requires two different primary things. One is we want to make sure that we've got all of our categories set up. And then the other is we want to make sure that your weighting is set the way you want it to be for your classes. I'm going to start with categories because the categories can impact the weighting. So if I click on grading, this primary item here, I can go to categories. You will all have some default categories. You can see them. They'll be the little schoolhouses. Everybody gets project, quizzes, and tests. You don't have to use them. You can hide them if you like to. You can adjust them. You cannot delete them. You can also create your own categories for whatever you like. Categories serve a number of purposes. At the most basic level, they allow you to color code your assignments so you can see very easily, very quickly, which ones are, for example, projects, which ones are independent studies work. Categories also, if you were to click on create a category, give you, or if I were to edit one, which I can edit them through the pencil. Categories also can control defaults for the assignments. So for example, if all of my homeworks, or even just most of my homeworks, are out of 10 points, I may want to set that as a default so I don't have to type in 10 every time I create an assignment. If I have one particular assignment that is different, maybe it's 15 points, that's fine. The default will drop in and you can change it when you create an assignment. So when you're creating a category, if you want to add new categories, you want to think about first, do you want to limit them to particular classes? You can have categories that only display for one class, and that's okay. Or you can have them show for all of your classes. That'll be the default. You have to have a name for them. You'll want to pick a color. There's 8 colors to choose from. If you want it to be active or inactive, you can control that here. So for example, if there's categories you don't want to use anymore, you don't want to see them anymore, you can make them inactive. And you could make the default categories, the test, quiz, project, inactive as well if you'd like to. You can give it a description. Not many people bother with that. The next piece you want to look at if you're setting up your categories is the assignment defaults. The publishing, you want to probably leave these as defaults. Publishing means can students and can parents view it? You could change it. You can, instead of having it be the default of immediately, you could have it show up a particular number of days before it's due. On the day it's due, maybe you're creating your assignments early. So there is some control over there. Published scores would mean, would people be able to see the scores? Some people like to not show the scores until a particular time. You can do that. You can turn off the publishing of the scores. However, you need to remember at some point you've got to go back and turn the score back on. And remember, these are defaults for the assignments. We can change these on individual assignments. You have to remember to go back and turn the score back on, which can be a hassle. And you need to remember that if you are putting in scores, they are still affecting the term grade, regardless of whether you show them by publishing or not. So I'm not sure this is a super useful option because it's still affecting their grade and kids are going to wonder what's going on. The next pieces are the grading options for the assignments. Again, defaults if you choose that category. The first is score type. This is purely how would you like to enter grades for this type of assignment? Would you like to type in how many points they scored? You know, maybe you want to type in 15 points or 20 points or whatever it is, you'd choose points. Do you like to type it in as a percent? You want to give everything in this category 90% or 80%, or that's how you like to grade. You choose percent. Grade scale. This case, you would do letters. You want to type in an A or an A minus or an A plus. Keep in mind with grade scale, the math is still happening. And so if you use grade scale, what's going to happen is that the letters you choose still have values. And the values are going to be the midpoint of that letter. So for example, the midpoint of an A is going to be like a 95. The midpoint of an A minus is going to be a 91.5. So there's still some math going on, and you lose some kind of fine control, but that's what happens if you choose letters for the grade scale. And there's also an option for just collect.
Is an A plus a 100?
No, it is not. It would be a 99. It's the midpoint. Everything's a midpoint. And so, yeah, if you want to have more control over that, I would not recommend letter grade scale. Collected only would be just if you want to mark that they've been collected, like a check mark, like it's turned in. You can control weight here. I would encourage, well, actually, let me talk about the points first. I'm sorry. Points, this is different from points on the entry type. Points on the entry type just means I want to type in how many points to keep going. Points in scoring is the value of the assignment, and this is probably the most important thing to think about when you're creating assignments, and a lot of people don't give it enough thought. The points of the assignment is how much it's worth. So you want to think about, let's say you're giving quizzes, and you give a quiz that is worth a value of 10 points, and then you give another quiz and you give it a value of 100 points. Well, when the grades are calculated, that 100-point quiz was worth 10 times as much as the 10-point quiz. So you really need to be thoughtful about that. If you're doing category weighting and you have a category within quizzes, that 100-point quiz is going to heavily skew their grade. Even if you are doing grading based on a total point system, it is still going to be a heavy skew there. So really give some thought to the amount of points. I encourage, for similar type assignments, you want to have a similar value of points. For example, my homeworks are all worth 5 points. My quizzes generally are worth 10 points. Maybe if I had a really long one, I might make it worth 15. You know, my tests are generally 30 to 40 points, so they're similar. Be careful about big skews in how the points are valued. Weight allows you to weight this assignment as well. Essentially, it's doing the same thing. For example, if I have an assignment that's 20 points and an assignment that's 40 points, the 40-point one is already going to be worth twice as much. Weighting would allow me to say, okay, this one is worth 20 points and this one is worth 20 points. But if I put a weight of 2 on the second assignment, it's really valued as 40. I think it's an easy way to get messed up. I would stick just with points and try to avoid weighting.
I have a question
Sure.
about, so if you put the score type as a percent,
Yes.
what would you then put in the points? Like if you're doing everything out of 100, like if you're putting it into as a percentage, like they got a 95% or an 80% on the assignment, what would the points be?
You would still need to think about what those points are going to be, right? Because remember, the points are the value of the assignment. The percent is simply how you're going to enter it. So let's say I had an assignment worth 10 points. I could enter a percent of 95. That's like they got 9.5 points out of 10, right? So don't conflate these two. A lot of people think if you do a score type of percent, you need to enter 100 points. That's not at all the case. There's no relationship between the two. If you wanted to make everything out of a value of 100 points, obviously you could. They would all be weighted equally. So do be careful about that. Yeah, the percent is simply, I like to enter 85, 92, 96, whatever. Still, how much it's worth, the points, it matters.
Okay.
And the last one is, do you want to count in the final grade? You might have, for example, a category that is just like practice work, right? And you want to record that they did it. Maybe you want to give them a sample score, but it doesn't count. This would be an option there. Do you want it to count or not? And so you could have things exempt, not And so that is the idea behind categories. You'll want to maybe add some categories or adjust some categories. If you are doing category weighting, this is really important. You've got to set up your categories first, because if they're not set up, you can't use them for grade calculation. Everybody okay with categories? And of course, if you want to see ones you've hidden, you can show them with the show active. So do give some thought to categories before you move on to anything else. Once you've got your categories set up, the very next thing you want to do, and again, every August, is we want to make sure your classes, the grade calculations are set up the way you'd like them to be. And that's going to be under settings. Settings and then traditional grade calculations. That's what we use at the secondary. And so in here, you'll see every year, your classes will start with defaults of total points per term. And then of course, the main primary term on top, a Y1 for a year-long course or S1 for a semester course, will be preset by the school with term weighting. So that main term, that Y1, those are going to be set by us for your division. Shouldn't be any need to look at it or change it. Just so you understand, on a year-long course, that's going to be 27, 27, 27 for each trimester and 19% for the final. At the middle school, it'll be 30, 30, 30, and 10. You shouldn't need to set this. You shouldn't need to adjust this. On semester classes, it will be 40, 40, 20. At the middle school, it'll be 50, 50. Understand that even if you do not have a final exam, you don't need to mess with these calculations as long as you are careful not to put anything in the F1 term, assuming you don't have a final exam. Many of you probably will have final exams. If you don't have a final exam, just make sure nothing ends up in the F1 term. And if that's the case, there will be nothing to calculate here, and it will treat T1, T2, and T3 evenly. So for example, I teach an AP class. I don't have a final exam. This is fine. I don't need to make any changes here. If I leave this one blank when I make my assignments, the other three will be treated evenly. What you do need to give some thought to is how your terms are calculated. So total points means it will take all of the points you have entered for assignments, and then it will take whatever they have scored, and it will do the division, and that's what will happen. A lot of teachers, particularly in science, this is very popular. It's a preference matter. If you are doing total points, obviously you need to really give extra thought to the points you assign to every single thing and to make sure that they make sense compared to any other assignment. So, you know, if your homeworks are worth a very small amount, you might make them worth 5 or 10 points. Quizzes might be more, depending on how much more valuable they are. Assessments might be more. It depends on what you're doing. If you are not doing total points, if you're doing category weighting, which is very popular, you will want to make some changes here. You'll want to click on the edit for the term. And what you'll do here is you can see right now it's set to total points. If I want to make changes here, I can add additional rows. So for my class, for example, I have 4 categories. I do homework, projects, quizzes, and tests. So I need 4 rows for those categories. So I'm going to add 3 more rows. I'm going to set the type for each row as category weighting. And then I'm going to choose the categories I want. So for me, it is test, homework, project, quiz. It auto-decided based on the first 4 in the list. You may need to manipulate this. The weight then is what the categories are worth. Again, this is only if you're doing category weighting. It will do it mathematically. So in this case, if I have a weight of 1 for each, they're all worth the same. They all come out as 25. To make sure you don't go crazy, I would encourage entering the weight as the percent you would like. So let's say, for example, maybe my tests are worth 40%. My quizzes are worth, I don't know, 30%. Projects are worth 20%, and homeworks are worth 10%. Let's just say that is my category weighting. It's not, but it's close enough. Put these numbers in, I can save it, and I will have my weighting set up for trimester 1. There are other options here as well. If you drop low scores, I don't know if a lot of people do that, but you can choose to drop, the lowest overall, the lowest per category. There are some controls you can do in here if you wanted to auto do that. You can, of course, do that manually as well on the grade sheet. once you're set up with one term, the nice thing you can do is you could, of course, go into T2 and go into T3 and then do this across 5 classes, but you can copy these as well. So likely your other trimesters are going to be the same weighting. And so once you have one trimester set up, what you can do is you can click on the gear, and the gear in any section will give you additional functions. And I can copy calculations. What I probably want to do is set this class up the way I'd like it to be, because I can not only copy from trimester 1 to 2 and 3, but once I have this class set up, if other classes are the same, I can copy an entire class to another entire class. And once you've been here more than a year, you can also copy last year's class to this year's class. So maybe ideally you only need to set these up once, and then each year you just copy and check. So first I'm going to copy T1 to T2 and T3. Get this class set up the way I want it to be. I'll say I'm copying within a class. This is the class, and this is the term. I want T1, and I want to copy over T2 and T3. I will validate. It'll tell me if there's any issues. That's fine. I don't use standards. We don't use standards generally at the secondary. Copy. And now I can see if I look at T3, great, it's got my weighting. If I had more classes, I could go back to the year again. I could copy to another class. I could say, okay, this term here, when you do class to class, this is where the class exists. For example, I could say, let's go back to my last year class. Let's take my Comp Science A from last year. I want to look for a class this year and copy it over. You also, of course, could do within years. So I could do 2021 to 2021, and I could copy to, if I had more sections of the same class, I could copy to those destination classes. I can't show you that because my independent study is a semester class, but this is the place you do it. It should be pretty easy to follow. I validate, and so this space I'm going to copy over what I have with last year's details. And so here I can see what my weights actually are: 40, 25, 15, 20. I was pretty close. Any questions about grade setup before I move on to assignments and scoring? Definitely make sure you do this, really important. You don't want to get to like October or November and then realize you haven't done it, and then you do it, and then the kids' grades like radically skew because you used to be on total points and now you're on categories. That's a cause of some unhappiness generally. So once you've got everything set up, categories, and then your calculations the way you want them to be, you're ready for the new year. You want to start creating assignments and scoring the kids. So most of that is going to be done under grading. And we can see a couple of things we're going to work with here. There's an assignment list and a score sheet. These are the primary things you'll probably be dealing with. Under the assignment list, this is a place where you can view all of the assignments for this class. And I can see here one thing I want to be careful about is which term I'm viewing. On the top right, this is a view filter. So this would affect anything you're looking at, maybe the score sheet, maybe the assignment list. If I want to view everything, I can choose all. If I want to view the whole year, it would be Y1. If I just want to look at the trimester, which is most typical, I would pick the trimester. And there's one big thing I want to point out here. You see how there are date ranges for each of these terms? For example, T1 is 9/3 to, what is that, 11/29. These date ranges are really important. When you create assignments, you have to choose a date for them. Whatever date you choose is the term in which it will fall. So for example, if it's the end of the year and I'm doing some of my grading a little late maybe, and I enter a date of June 8th, well, guess what? That counts towards my final. It may not have been what I wanted. Or if it's November 30th and I'm still grading some T1 work, you need to be thoughtful about the dates on those assignments. So you can always check those here, but make sure to give them a thought whenever you're making an assignment. So this is where I can view all of my assignments. Of course, I don't have any, so I probably want to create some. You can create them wherever you are. If you're on the score sheet, if you're on the assignment list, doesn't matter. It's always at the top here, plus an assignment. I can choose which classes it's for. If I have an assignment that all of my sections are going to do, I can check those sections and have that assignment create for those sections. And if you have sections on different days, there will be an option under date. If you pick more than one section, you can select different dates for those sections. So you don't need to do the entry, 3 or 4 or 5 different times. You've got to give it a name. You must pick a category. Even if you are not using category weighting, you'll have to pick a category. That's a required option. So I might say this is project. As soon as I pick project, it will fill in those defaults I set on my category. So that's why you may want to give some thought to those defaults. The date is very important. This should be the due date when it's due. The score type, again, is how I'd like to enter this, and we'll see more of this when we look at the score sheet. This is simply what's your preference on entering. The score extra points, the entry points, I'm sorry, this is how many points it's worth. Very important. Always think about this. What's it worth? If you want to give extra points, this allows you to exceed the base points. So for example, if you have extra credit, and even though my assignment is worth 10 points, it is possible for a kid to get maybe 11 points or 110%. You have to set extra points on that. Otherwise, it won't let you enter an 11 or 110. Weight would allow you to control the weight of the assignment. I would encourage do that through points. If I want this assignment worth twice as much, just make it out of 20 points. You'll be happier, I think. Is it going to count? Typically, you want it to count. The students tab you won't use a lot, but this would allow you to make an assignment only for specific students. Maybe somebody transfers into your class and you're doing some kind of roll-up assignment or something that only they're doing. You can, control what students it affects. Not a common thing to do. Standards we won't be using at the secondary level typically. And here are the publishing options. I recommend immediately, I recommend publish scores, but you have some flexibility. If you want to enter your things early, you want to control when they show, you can of course adjust these. I save and close it, I have the assignment. If I need to make any changes, I can always click the pencil, the edit button, no problem. If I would like to score it, I can do it here, or I can do it on the score sheet. We'll go to the score sheet in just a second, but I just want to understand, if I click on the assignment name, it will bring up that assignment and I can score it here, no different than doing it on the score sheet. It is totally up to you. I'm going to show you this on the score sheet, but I want you to understand these boxes, they're the same as what we'll see on the score sheet. So it's up to you where you'd like to go, how you'd like to access it. I'm going to go to the score sheet, which is under grading and score sheet. This is the most typical place you want to put in your scores, but you don't have to. This is nice because it will show you the term grade as well. Of course, whatever term you have selected up here. When you are grading, you want to click into the little box for whichever kid you are grading, and you will get what's called the score calculator pop up on the right side. Here you can enter a score, you can type it in. Of course, I can type it in, wherever I have it selected. Maybe I'll give this kid 9 out of 10. There are some other options on the score calculator that are pretty cool though. You can tag it as missing. This is great because then the parents and the kids know it's missing. It'll show up with a little colored box and they can see that online as well. Maybe this student didn't do it, right? Obviously he's got a 9 out of 10, he's done it. You can mark it as collected. This way everybody knows you've gotten it and maybe you just haven't graded it yet. Or maybe it isn't going to be graded and it's just a collection item. You can mark it as late. This is so you and the students and the parents know that this assignment was turned in late. You can tag it as incomplete. And the principals do want you using these markers. They're valuable information, especially for the parents to keep track of what's going on. And potentially maybe we'll cut down on some emails and calls you get from them as well. You can mark it as incomplete and it's got its own color coded. You can tag it as absent, so you know that the kid was absent that day. And that's why you haven't gotten it. Exempt will exempt this assignment and this score from this kid's grades. So that actually makes a change to how the grades calculate. When I exempt it, you'll see it kind of, it's a little hard to see, but it turns into sort of a italicized purple. This 9 will not count for him anymore. So you can exempt assignments if you need to. If you leave it blank, of course, it will act like it's exempt anyways, because a blank is not a 0. A blank is nothingness, and it can't calculate nothingness. So as long as it blanks, it acts like it's exempt. But if it's really going to be exempt for the kid, it's probably a good idea to mark it so everybody knows you're not waiting for them to do it. There are fill options as well if you want to fill vertically. Let's say everybody got a 10 out of 10 and I don't want to type that, however many times. Oops. You can fill vertically. It will not fill over scores that have already been entered. So for example, if I have a 9 here and I fill vertically, it's not going to overwrite scores. You could fill horizontally as well. That feels a little crazy, but I guess some people might find a use for that. That, of course, would be across different assignments. There is a comment box down here as well. You can put comments in for this assignment. Understand that these will show for parents and students as well. So be thoughtful about comments in there. They are not private comments for you. And do make sure you save frequently. When you save, it will calculate their grade based on the changes you've made there. If you wanted more space for comments, there's a little option up here on the top right. It's a sort of a comment bubble. That just makes this bigger. When you do mid-year narratives, we use these comment boxes, and this can be handy to have a bigger space to work with. But normally you want a calculator. And let me clear these out so they don't get confused. Any questions about scoring, filling in scoring, or creating assignments?
I have a question.
Sure.
So just to double check, so when you're creating these assignments, these are solely for the purpose of grading, you're not actually attaching an assignment that they will access from there, or?
Yes, correct. This is purely for grading. When you are issuing work for kids to do, you would typically do that on your PowerSchool learning page, or potentially in Google Classroom if you were doing that. What we're looking at here is just for the purposes of grading.
Yeah, I know.
After the assignment is done.
Sorry?
Did I not understand?
I know in PSL they had the assignment tab as well, so those are unrelated basically.
I'm sorry, run that by me again?
On the PowerSchool learning page, they had an assignment, like you could create an assignment. So that's unrelated to this, right?
So yes and no. And let me show you one thing with that. Generally, the answer is yes. But there's a caveat to that. And I want to show you that. And that was kind of the next thing I was going to get into. If you are creating assignments in PowerSchool Learning, of course you can, this would be for posting work for students. And I think hopefully Mario showed you this. You can create an assignment. You can give it a title, of course, first work, whatever. You can put in a description, do these things. You can give it a date, whatever date it's due. Let's see. Actually, let me go to my current year class. There is an option here where you can allow it to also create the assignment for you in PowerTeacher Pro. They are linked together, but there's some caveats to that I want to show you. Give me a second. Let me go to my inactive class and see if I can show you that. There we go, great. So if I'm creating assignments, and only assignments, this doesn't work for events. If I create an assignment in PowerTeacher Pro, I pick a due date, I put in the details, whatever I want to do. I can have it also create in PowerTeacher Pro. Now, whether or not you want to do this, I want you to understand you may want to not do this. If you want it to not create in PowerTeacher Pro and you would like to enter PowerTeacher Pro separately, do be sure you uncheck this if you create a PowerTeacher learning assignment. Some people do like this. They like it creating it in both places. I want to give you a couple of warnings. The title cannot be excessively long. PowerTeacher Pro has a limit. And so like a short sentence, or maybe like 6, 8, 10 words will work okay. If you have an exceptionally long title, that will not sync and it will not create. The second piece is, you see here the total points? This is going to be the points the assignment is worth in PowerTeacher Pro. If you need to change it, you can only do it here. This will always default to 100, may not be what you want. So that can sometimes be a hassle. And finally, the biggest thing is there is no option to choose a category in PowerTeacher Learning. What is going to happen is it will create that assignment for you and it will pop up under your assignment list. It will default to whatever the first category is you have. And so you are probably going to need to go back to PowerTeacher Pro anyways. Of course, you know, to enter scores, you probably want to do that. You will need to adjust the category potentially every time to quiz or homework. So do you like that? Then that's fine. If you're creating assignments, leave this check. If you don't like that, make sure you uncheck the Save in PowerTeacher if you make an assignment. There's no right or wrong to it, but those are the things to think about if you're doing that. Is that helpful? Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions on Scoresheet before I move on to the other kind of stuff we got here? All right. Some of the things here, there's a gear. You can show or hide metrics. The metrics are pretty basic, mean, median, and mode, but those are kind of cool. You can copy assignments if you'd like to, just like you could copy those grading calculations. I don't think a lot of people use this because what's better is when you create an assignment, you just choose all the sections. So I don't know how much you would be copying assignments, but you can if you would like to. And that works similarly. There's a category option, which we've looked at, right? Creating categories. So you should hopefully be comfortable with this. Make sure you're happy with your categories. Grades traditional. This will bring up some metrics. It will, of course, show you the term grade for the students, and it will show you how many absences. This, of course, is going to be absences and tardies from attendance. So this is pretty cool. This is pretty helpful. A really easy way to see how many times a kid was absent for a term, how many times the kid was tardy for a term, just right quickly here. These ones here, the missing, late, and incomplete, these will rely on markings that you made, but it's a great way to see, oh man, this kid had 15 late things this term, like what's going on, right? So it's an easy way to see what is going on with absences and with late, missing, incomplete. We don't use standards at the secondary level. Comment verification. What this is going to show you is this is going to show you term-specific comments. These will be used in two fashions. One is you can leave term-specific comments if a kid's conduct or work habits at the end of the term is not been good. And I think it is required if they're getting a C- or lower. The way you enter term-specific comments is you click on the term grade. Of course, I have no grades now, but I would click on the term grade. You can do this anywhere you can click on the term grade. I could do it here. I could do it from the score sheet. And I could put those term-specific comments in the comment box. These would not be tied to any assignment. It would be tied to the term itself. The other time you will use this, and I have to create the term, it doesn't show quite yet, but there will be an N1 term as well for year-long classes. The N1 term is used at the middle of the year for mid-year comments. And it will just be like a 2-day period in January. It'll show right here. And you would want to make sure you have N1 selected. And then you would click on the course grade for that N1 term. And you would put in your mid-year comments. This is how we give, you know, like a wrap-up of how the kids are doing at the middle of the year. And it's required for every class and every student. And there'll be instructions that go out, so you don't have to remember it necessarily. But if you wanted to view all of them, I could come here, I could select that N1 term once it shows up, and I could see, edit, enter if I'd like to, all the comments for those students. So it's just another place to work on those comments. I can view totals by categories. This is another advantage of having categories. I can see how the kids are doing within each category, how many points they're scoring. I can see mean, median, and mode within the categories as well. So this can be handy if you do a lot with categories. And all reporting terms is handy as well. This is a great place where you can view all of the terms. You'll notice that at the bottom of many of these, it will say columns per page. And as you get more assignments, you would see the same thing, columns per page. You can control this to a limited extent. For example, if I have 9 columns per page, you know, I could increase this to 15 or 20, but it'll still show only as much as it can fit on the screen. And as you get more assignments, you will have little options at the bottom to move between pages. It should be pretty obvious, but that's what those do. And so all reporting terms here, I can see all of my terms all on one view, which is pretty nice. I can see how the kids are doing term to term, how their final was, how their year was. Any questions about grading before I move into student-specific views? All right. The next section is students. And here there are a number of views, and these are all going to be student-specific. So if I click on students, I can choose a particular student, and I can choose the view I'd like to see for that student. So I have Jed selected here, and I can view Jed's assignments, and it would show me just Jed's assignments and his scores. And remember, of course, anywhere you can click on it, you can edit it. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can make changes. Comment log, you can see the comments you left for him. Obviously, I don't have any at this point. Demographics, this is a place where you can access basic demographic details and parent contacts if you need it. If you need a phone number for a parent or you want to email them, this is an easy way to grab and access those. And if I'm on any student, I can click on the top here. I can change the student I want to look at, or I can click the view I'd like to look at. So it's easy to access those in any fashion. Any questions about student views? The next section is progress. Not a lot of people use this, but I'll show some sort of neat things that are in here. Of course, we are using standards at the secondary. We're using traditional progress. The idea of this is it will show bar charts for, and of course, I don't have any grades entered in here. Let me go back to my last year class, and I'll see if I can show you some better details on that. Here we go. So for example, I'm viewing trimester 1, and I can see here, let's see. This will show me how my students are doing. I had 15 students. A pluses and A's are kind of the dark green, and so it color codes them down. So it gives you bar charts of how your students are doing. This is probably more valuable if you had really big classes, like 50 kids or something in like a public school, but it can still be some kind of neat metrics overall how your kids are doing. You can see overall markers on late and missing, just in general for your course. If you go to view all, this is neat as well. I can see all of the scores. If you click on a particular term, it will show you that term and the last term. This can be less useful because, for example, if I click on C2, well, in between there's that N1 for narratives. So, you know, it's only so useful. But it can be a neat way at least to see, you know, our kids going up, our kids going down. Of course, you could look at all reporting terms as well, but let's just give some graphical details. There is a reporting section as well. Not a lot of people use this either, but if you want to print out your entire score sheet, you can do that here. If you want to print out your entire roster, you can do it here. The individual student report is kind of useful. You might print those. The students can access these online, so you probably wouldn't be giving this to them. But let's say maybe you wanted to print a PDF of your comments or your narratives. This is a good place to go. You can pick which classes you want. You can control the layout. What data do I want? Maybe I want just the course grade comments, and maybe I want it only for N1. N1 would be those mid-year comments. So these are some options you can create. You run a report, it makes a PDF for you. And so it would make a PDF, one student per page with their narrative comments. This is pretty handy because they usually do peer-based proofing of these. So obviously other teachers can't access your gradebook. You need to make a PDF of those narratives for other teachers to proof. Finally, under settings, there's a number of settings if you want to make any adjustments. You can control the display and what you see, how the students look, how they sort, if you'd like to sort them differently. You can control the descriptions of your classes, and you can give your classes custom names that would only show for you. This is helpful during summer school when you don't know which class is when, maybe one's in the morning, one's in the afternoon. Anyways, you can give them custom names to help you remember which is which. Let's see, student grade scale. You aren't going to have access to this. The grade scales are set. And the grade scales mean, a B plus is going to be like an 87 to 90. An A minus is going to be, 90 to 93, something like that. That would not be something you'd have control over. Traditional grade calculations, of course, we have looked at already. Apps would allow you to get back to that PowerTeacher portal. Maybe you want to go look at attendance. You can get back to here. And class at the top, this will take you to PowerSchool Learning. It's just a shortcut, but my portal drops you in on your portal. If I click on Pages or Calendar, it will drop me directly on either the page or the calendar for whatever class I have selected. So it's just an easy shortcut to get over to PowerSchool Learning if you need to. I know that's a lot of information. This is recorded, so we'll post it as well. And you're always welcome to ask for help. It can be kind of overwhelming and easy to forget things. So if you have any questions about like, I want to do this, or how do I make this setting, or I want to do this kind of assignment, always feel free. You can email tech support@campbellhall.org, and we'll get back to you pretty quickly with some thoughts on how you'd set that, how you'd change it, anything you need related to your gradebook or grading. Does anybody have any questions I can answer for you? Hopefully that wasn't too fast for anybody. Yes, I think you're muted though. I can't hear you. It should be on the bottom left, a little mute icon.
Or you can hold
Okay,
the space bar down.
I got it. Sorry. Okay, in the demographics, can you find whether they have a learning accommodations?
Not here. They haven't released the information for that yet, but I will show you really quickly. They're going to send out a video because that is done through PowerSchool, but it is done through the main portal. And just so you understand that when you click on attendance, you will be able to see the little blue icons, documents, by kids who have learning plans. Obviously, I can't show you the attendance view because today is not an attendance day, but I think, now I don't know if any of my kids have learning plans to show you, but I think I can access it under the backpack. And let me just go through my kids really quickly. Here we go.
Yes.
This kid has a learning plan, and this is where I could access it. I go here, and then let's see, I think I have to do open document. A little while since we set this up. And I can view his learning plan there. And this is all the details I need to know about him. So that is how you're going to access learning plans. But I know this is new this year for everybody. They used to do it through Google Drive sharing. They're going to send out more information, a video that walks you right through what I just did.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm curious as to your triage system for how you handle tech support emails with like 8 people getting the emails. Who decides what tech support specialist is going to respond?
Sure. So it comes into a queue for us. Everybody gets an email notification. Typically, we self-assign. So everybody has their own specialty. Like if an assignment comes in for, you know, grading, typically I will take it. If something, you know, and so if Gail, for example, would be the backup on grading questions. You know, if he knows if I'm in meetings or if I don't answer a case within like 5 or 10 minutes, then he would take that. Occasionally, of course, Michael will also assign cases depending on what he thinks is best for the handling. But that's kind of the idea for case handling. We usually try to get back pretty quick on those cases, but of course, like this morning, everybody was in a meeting. Sometimes you got to wait a little bit until somebody's free.
Okay.
Any other questions I can answer for you guys?
Alex, where do you post these videos?
They are going to, I'm actually not posting them. I think they're going to be on that site that Michael showed this morning, that online learning site. I'm pretty sure they're going to be there. So check there first. Anything else I can answer for you? Obviously, always feel free. Tech support, definitely the best way to get any kind of help with any kind of computer related question you have. All right, otherwise, thank you for coming. I know it's been a long morning, 3 hours of Zoom is kind of brutal, but I hope you guys have a nice afternoon and welcome to Campbell Hall.
Thanks.
Yeah.